Welcome to Caching Waves. This is an Elliott Wave update for HBAR. Now, before I get into my macro counts, I want to show you a couple things that are pretty exciting for the potential scenario that we are quite bullish here on HBAR, and that is the volume. Look at this volume on the daily. It's the most volume we've gotten in the history of this chart on Binance. There's not really much divergence present except between this previous high and this high, and that can be wiped out pretty quickly with another move to the upside. If we go to the weekly, we still have 3 days left for this volume candle, and it could potentially have the most volume in a week in history, as you can see, and there's not really divergence present on the weekly. So there's a chance we really move here, and I want to show you those scenarios I came up with. But first of all, this is the one that we were tracking, and it got us at least in the right direction. But there's a possibility that we continue from here. Now, if you take a look at this, just consider the way a diagonal usually ends. We're looking for a zigzag pattern. We are looking for potentially a thrust of volume on the end. But to me, we're not getting much chop, we're getting more separation. And if you compare it to the previous waves, it doesn't look like it really belongs. So this is just the arguments I'm giving for this to potentially keep going. Now, obviously I can be proven wrong if we just reverse right away. And also have stops in place already for that fact, right? So I'm not too concerned. So I'm going to adjust my stops today a little bit, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. But there is a potential that this is beginning a pretty large move. Just wanted to make that aware. Now, if we do reverse, I told you I'd update this, I would expect us to stop. We're already past the 1-to-1 extension of this A off this B. I would accept us to stop at about the 1.618 at 12.85 cents or before, and then we would get a retracement, and this would just make a 3.35 to the upside. But if that happens, I'd get stopped out in this scenario. So that's my I'll call it my secondary, not my primary, my alternative right now. My primary is actually changing, and I'll show you how. So let's go out to this area here. It's been a pretty difficult count as well, just since the start of the trend. Very difficult. My primary is currently that this was a expanded flat as an A, B, C. You can see our third wave came up a little bit short here in red at the 1.382, so we'd expect our fifth not to hit the 200%. We hit the 1.786 extension of the wave one off the two, which is, and you can see with the separation that looks like a third wave. So I actually have this as a 335, which means this would be an A, B, C, or a WXY, depending if you put this as either a zigzag to begin with and a zigzag here, or if you can count this as 5 waves, have a triangle and 5 waves up. But it's a very difficult count, as you can see. So if this count is accurate and we have an ABC or a WXY, our 1-to-1 target eventually is all the way up at 177 with the low potentially in. And on linear, we'd be looking at about 48 cents because our high is actually over here. So considering those options, I have to consider, okay, if this is the bottom, how do we get up there, right? So let's remove this. That's got to go in there. And what I'm considering is this option here. Now, there are some things wrong with it. that kind of go not against guidelines, but aren't within guidelines. So first of all, we look at this area. If you've watched my previous videos, you know I've always considered this a 3 wave, not a 5. A couple of different reasons. The most significant one is right in this area. If this is our low for our 4th, if we had a 1, 2, 3, 4, very difficult to get 5 out of this, right? It really looks like we have a diagonal and 5 waves up. So most likely a zigzag. We take our measurements, guideline, minimum 618 extension. We go to linear, tag the 618 extension. So what I consider this myself is a ABC for a double zigzag, which creates our A wave in our flat, and I actually am leaning that this is our low over here. And we got a truncation. So this would be an A, B, C. I'll label this in real time. We got our, whoa. We got our 3 wave, 3, 5, and I think we have a truncation here. I don't like adding truncations to things, but the evidence is pointing to me that this is the beginning of something rather than the end of the diagonal. Just again, the volume we put in, the fact we don't have divergence. I have to consider the other options, and this is what I've come up with. And this is a 3, 3, 5 with the truncation. And if we go down to the smaller time frame, we would have to consider this 5 waves as a diagonal. For our C wave, and we get truncated down here. Basically a double bottom, right? You can see how close we came. Very, very close, just wicks. So that's how I would label this as the beginning of something. As for our measurements, this is what I didn't like. Again, a guideline, not a rule, is if you follow my videos, you know I like to at least get a .618 extension for our C wave. On linear we didn't hit it. On log we didn't hit it. So we came up short. Again, not a rule, more of a guideline, but I usually go with the guidelines. But because of that action, once again, overnight and the look of this wave, I have to consider that maybe we went against guidelines. It does happen more often than you'd think in crypto, where it does the least possible thing based on guidelines, right? So we have to consider this. So if this count is accurate, we'd expect 5 waves up from here. And this is just our wave 1 finishing up. And our targets in green there for this A, B, C is up at 34.94. So a pretty significant potential move from here. We're talking almost 200%. Where I expect the wave 1 pivot to be is at the 618. Again, similar targets as that 1.618 at 1260. And looking for a wave 2 after. But the most important thing should be pretty obvious is what happens right here. If we pop up, reverse hard, obviously that diagonal was the correct count. If we pop up, we go sideways, this becomes very likely in my point of view. So first targeting that 1260, I'd like to see an ABC correction after that. Important things to keep in mind is I want to see consolidation at or above this area for our wave 2. Flipping resistance as support, this entire area here. And one thing I noticed here too, you can see there's not a lot of resistance in this area. We can plow through it pretty quickly. If you remember, previous targets were between 18 and 27 cents, which would line up to our third wave area of our third. So it's quite interesting how things can change, as you can see. So alternatively, if this is a WXY, you can see I have it marked in gray as an alternative to the upside. I would have this making a WXY as zigzag patterns. So we'll have to be aware there at the 1-to-1 extension of this W wave off the X, which is at 18.6 cents. That's a potential pivot point back to the downside. So just keeping that in mind. That's why you see it there in gray. But we'll dig into this time frame here. Show you my targets currently. So if this is our low, I have this as a 1-2 as a diagonal, another 1-2 as a diagonal. Our third wave of our third came past the 2.618 extension, came back in 3, and we're looking to target anywhere in this area for our third of our third, then looking for a fourth wave back and a fifth up to complete our wave 1. The dotted green lines you see is the 1.618 extension of this wave 1 off the fourth, and also this entire 1 through 3 off the fourth is the 618. So we have kind of a zone there between 13.04 and 1211. Nothing says we have to get there. We could have topped here if this is 5 waves. Looks like we need one more to the upside, but we could have topped in that third wave. I'll have to give it a little more time. So as for my stops and letting this play out, I've decided not to get rid of any of my H bar at the moment. I want to give this a little more time. And once this fills out, I'll probably put it at around just past the 618, which would be, depending where we top, come up to that 12, you know, just around like 8.5 cents. But I will update that as we go. But that's for my longer term setup. Obviously, if this is our third wave, as expected, we expect between the 382 and the 50, as shy as the 236 for our fourth wave. Put that on the pivots for you. And we'll have to wait for this to finish up and top. And stop will go at the 618 for this current trade. So that's how I'm going to navigate it. looking for this to complete a wave 1 of a C wave. Sorry, just cleaning this up a little bit. So this is what I'm looking for, guys. Eventual targets at 34.93 if this is correct, and making a ABC to the upside. Invalidation of this count is at this beginning of this wave 1 I have labeled at 6.74 cents. That's absolute invalidation of this count. But it's looking good. I'm gonna hold. I'm not gonna sell until I get invalidation past the 618 of this wave 1 once it completes. All right, guys, so it's looking really good currently. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that volume as well on the weekly, but you can see it's strong. It's very strong. So pretty excited for this. It was a nice turn of events to change my point of view on here. And yeah, HBAR is looking good. If you like my videos, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.